Elros Tar-Minyatur ruled the Númenorians for 400 years and 10. For to the Númenorians long life had been granted, and they remained unwearied for thrice the span of mortal men in Middle-earth. But to Eärendil's son the longest life of any man was given, and to his descendants a lesser span, and yet one greater than to others even of the Númenorians. And so it was until the coming of the Shadow, when the years of the Númenorians began to wane. Hello Tolkien geeks, and welcome back to Voice of Geekdom. This video is part of my series on the island state of Númenor, which was gifted to the First Age Edain for their role in overthrowing Morgoth, and which became the global superpower of the Second Age. You don't have to have watched the previous videos to make sense of this one, but you may enjoy checking out the playlist as we work our way through Númenorian history in roughly chronological order. Don't forget to leave this video a like to help the channel out. I don't make the rules, but it really does help me to reach more people. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon button. The first king of Númenor was born Elros. He was the son of Elwing, the granddaughter of Beren and Luthien, and the famous Eärendil the Mariner, son of Tuor and Eärendil of Gondolin. And he was also the twin brother to Elrond, the later Lord of Rivendell, whom we meet in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Elros and Elrond were born in the havens of Sirion in the last years of the First Age, and were taken prisoner at the age of 6 by the sons of Fëanor, who had attacked their home in order to attempt the recapture of the Silmaril which their parents bore, which was necessary to fulfill the blasphemous oath of their father, which the Fëanorians had sworn in Tirion hundreds of years prior. While their parents sailed away to Valinor with the Silmaril to seek the aid of the Valar, Elros and his brother were therefore left to be raised by Maedhros and Maglor, the two eldest sons of Fëanor, as well as the last two surviving. And it was said that, despite their status as hostages, Maglor actually cherished them, and that a great love grew between them in those days. Eventually, Maedhros and Maglor made one last desperate attempt to regain the other two Silmarils after they were recovered from Morgoth by the host of Valinor in the War of Wrath. After their many evil deeds, being therefore no longer worthy to hold the hallowed jewels, Maedhros and his Silmaril perished in a chasm filled with fire, while Maglor threw his into the ocean. No Tolkien text tells us precisely what eventually became of Elros's foster father Maglor, but once again, at the end of the First Age, Elros and Elrond were alone, and effectively orphaned at the age of 58, fully grown but not yet considered adult elves. It was at that time that the Valar gave the choice to the half-elven twins to live the life of one of the firstborn and remain immortal, or to accept the gift of men and become mortal. Elrond chose to remain immortal, though he stayed in Middle-earth and entered the service of the new High King of the Noldor in Lindon, Eärendil Gil-galad. Elros, meanwhile, chose the life of a mortal man, becoming a leader amongst the surviving Edain, and the fates of the two brothers were sundered. In the year 32 of the Second Age, after having gathered as many of the surviving Edain to him as possible, Elros arrived in Númenor, following the light of the star of Eärendil, his father, and was crowned king in the city of Armenelos. Further to the gift of the island itself, The Edain who settled there were granted longer lifespans than normal men, and Elros and his ruling line were given the longest lives of all of his people. It is said, according to a footnote in Unfinished Tales, that Elros took with him several artifacts which became heirlooms of his house. Chief among these were the sword Eärendil, which had belonged to King Thingol of Doriath, and the ring of Barahir, his mortal ancestor, which was the same ring that had bound Finrod, Galadriel's older brother, to the oath which he later fulfilled to Beren, Barahir's son. The Lord of the Rings fans will remember that this ring survived all the way into the Third Age, when it was worn by Aragorn, and was even shown in the Peter Jackson movies at one point. Also mentioned are the Great Axe of Tuor, who was Elros's paternal grandfather, and the Bow of Bregor, who was Barahir's father of the House of Beor. Elros took a royal name in Quenya, Tar-Minyatur. In English, the First High Lord, which began that particular tradition amongst the Númenorian kings of naming themselves in the ancient and noble language of Valinor. Language, not surprisingly for Tolkien, will be an important part of Númenorian history, as we shall see later on in this series. All of the kings take on a royal name in Quenya, beginning with the prefix Tar, meaning high, up until the day of Ar-Adunakor, the 20th king. Elros ruled for a record 410 years, and was said to have ruled wisely and well during that time. During his reign, the tower and the citadel were raised in Armenelos, the capital city at the foot of the Menel Tamar, that was the large mountain at the centre of the island, and soon after his coronation, the construction of Númenorian society began in earnest. In the year 442 of the Second Age, Elros was succeeded by his son, Vardamir Nolimon. Although, interestingly, the son, being already 381 years old at that time, immediately abdicated and passed the sceptre on to his own son, who took the name Tar-Amandil. This began the well-intentioned tradition of the kings subsequently passing the sceptre on to their successor before death, and before the mind becomes too feeble to rule. While we will eventually be continuing the story of the line of kings, in my next video in this series I want to take a closer look at the geography of the island itself. What settlements do we know of, as they were established in the lore? What do we know about the people that lived in the various regions? And what were the features of the land itself?